Welcome to the Pillar Podcast, where we put racial equity front and center. Join us as we explore equity. We'll take a look at overcoming opportunity gaps and strategies that ensure equitable learning experiences for all students in JCPS.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Pillar.
My name is Ian Brandon, Administrator and Satellite Office Supervisor
In the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty. And today we have Shawna Stenton, School-Based Decision-Making Specialist, also for the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty. Good morning.
Good morning, Ian, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk about all the great work going on at JCPS as well as with our school-based decision-making councils.
Yeah, happy to have you.
Thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up in this role?
Oh, okay, absolutely. So as you said earlier in the introduction, my name is Dr. Shawna Stenton. I am the SBDM or School-Based Decision-Making Specialist for Jefferson County Public Schools. I've been working for the district for over 20 years now in a variety of roles. I started off as a teacher, then went on to be a school-based administrator, and I've been in this position for going on almost 13 years. So in addition to being a proud JCPS employee, I'm also a proud JCPS parent. So if you see me flustered and tired looking, it's because I have a middle school boy. And for those of you who have middle school boys, you will know what I'm talking about. The rest of you, please, your thoughts and prayers would be appreciated in helping me get through these teenage years. In addition to being an employee and a parent, I'm also a JCPS graduate. I graduated from Atherton High School right up the street, and have retained some really great relationships with those people that I met in high school. So beyond high school, I went ahead and got my undergraduate at Hanover College. My undergraduate degree was in English, and so after that, I got my master's in art and teaching at Bellarmine University right down the street, and then continued. I'm truly a lifelong learner. I continued on through University of Louisville, go Cards, and then got a variety of degrees, including my educational specialist. I also have a principal certification and a PhD in organizational change in education. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. I think that's a great thing to have someone who is a JCPS product, right? Homegrown, and you go off, you venture, do other things, and come back and to work, and it comes full circle. So I think that's awesome. That's awesome to keep JCPS product home.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. JCPS and Louisville both are indeed home.
Nice. Well, I just want to jump right in here. Just kind of tell me about your role within the Office of School-Based Decision-Making.
So school-based decision-making is most commonly referred to as SBDM. So for the purpose of this interview, I'll refer to it simply as SBDM. So I am everything. It is myself and my right hand, left hand, and my brain, Calais. She is my data tech and wonderful, wonderful to work with. And she assists me in ensuring that we train over 1,000 council members annually. We also provide support in a variety of ways, and that includes everything from a newsletter, SBDM Connections, that comes out about 4 times a year. We also make sure that our website is up to date and contains a variety of resources that are available to parents, teachers, administrators, interested community members, as well as central office staff. You'll find principal resources on those, as well as sample policies, training information, everything and anything that you would ever need to know about SBDM councils and support you would need is located on that website. I also send out monthly emails to our principals through our assistant superintendents to make sure that they are aware of any changes in the law and are kept updated on how to ensure the most efficient and student-centered SBDM councils. I help facilitate, the elections of many of our council members, and one of my major roles is I assist in the selection of principals in Jefferson County.
Wow. Okay, it's a pretty robust division, or department, I would say, rather, or office, excuse me. I heard you mention student-centered. What is the overarching effect SBDM has on students?
Great question, Ian. I'd like to kind of back it up, and in order to understand the effect, I think we need to understand what our SBDM councils are. So our SBDM councils they're legally required. They're part of the Kentucky Education Reform Act, or KERA, and it's the law. It's KRS 160.345. So everything that we do in my shop is grounded purely in the law. So most councils are a standard single model, and that's going to be the administrator, who is the chairperson, 2 parents elected by other parents, and 3 teachers elected by those teachers, or by other teachers in the building. Some of the councils are larger. There'll be a double model where you'll have a principal, assistant principal, 4 parents, and 6 teachers on the council. And some of our schools, particularly our high schools, add additional members that are students to bring student voice to the table. So that's the composition of what a council looks like, so you can kind of know which players are at the table. They are legally the governing body. They set policies that are implemented by the principal and their staff. Those policies, though, do have to be in compliance with federal, state, and board policy, federal and state laws, as well as board policies. And all of those policies have to focus on student achievement and what is best for students. And so I think the value of having that variety of school stakeholders at the table is so important. You have parents, you have teachers, you have administrators, and you have students. And so you have so many of those school shareholders there. So I think about examples of how various groups bring so much to the table. And I attend a lot of our council meetings to support them and answer any questions, and just to be a valuable resource to them. And I remember one time I was with a middle school council, and it was the spring, and in the spring many of our schools start discussing changing their uniform dress code policies based on, kind of knowledge gleaned the previous year. And this school, the teachers and the principal were focusing so much on rivets. Well, I didn't even know until I heard this conversation what rivets are. Rivets, for those of you who don't know, are the little they're part of your jeans pocket, those little metal pieces, and apparently that's what makes jeans jeans. Is the presence of rivets. It's not the blue jean color or anything, but the rivets. And so they got, the teachers and the principal were talking about, well, they can't have rivets, and we need to do this and that, and really tightening up the dress code policy. And there was one of the parents was absent, and unfortunately the other parent was there. And I always refer to our parents as our voice of reason, because often they live in the school community and have their finger on the pulse of the school community in a different way than our teachers and our administrators do. And I could see the parent getting more and more uncomfortable, and finally she spoke up. And she said, I want to support you all, and I understand the concerns with dress code. However, what we're doing right now is creating a dress code policy that will be impossible for me to financially implement in my home. What you're talking about are forcing our students to get clothing that can only be purchased in a particular store, and that is very, very expensive. And so they listened, and they started backing up and creating a far more inclusive dress code. Now, you can say dress code doesn't have a lot to do with student achievement, but if the first thing a teacher does is fuss at a kid for not having a belt on when they come in the door, that sets the tone for their day. And so I think it's important to set our parents and therefore our students up for success. And it's not just dress code. The councils have 3 different kinds of policies: legally required, best practice, and additional. And your legally required policies would be things like your curriculum, your instruction, your assignment of students to classes and programs within the building, things like that. And then you'll have additional policies like homework, equity and diversity, budget, principal selection, and then additional policies like cell phone usage and dress code. And all of those do directly or indirectly impact student achievement, and we want to make sure that our councils make informed decisions. And when you have that many role groups at the table, it assists in making sure that we are more proactive in ensuring student success.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. I think to move toward making things equitable, you have to have a variety of stakeholders, right? Just different
Absolutely.
lenses, different perspectives, different experiences. So you mentioned a lot about parents' involvement, and I love that example. How can parents or guardians get access to council meeting information or get involved with SBDM council?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and answer your second question first, if you don't mind. That would probably be the easiest way to provide the context. So how do you get involved? First thing is, as a parent, you can contact your school's PTA, PTO, PTSA, and let them know that you're interested in serving. And then keep an eye out on newsletters, information coming from the school, because your PTA will let you know when elections are held. Now, elections are held, and it really depends. It's school by school. Sometimes it's in the spring, sometimes it's in the fall. We even have some of our schools that hold elections in December. Some of the terms are 1 year, some are 2 year. We have one school that even has a 3-year term. So you want to reach out to your PTA, let them know that you're interested in nominating yourself and serving, and that way they can let you know when the elections are occurring and how best to provide, or how best to reach out to nominate yourself. You can also reach out to me if you're not quite sure of how to do that, and I'll be more than happy to assist you in doing that. I'm happy to answer questions and help anyone in any way, shape, or form. But let's say hypothetically that the council elections have occurred recently and you're not going to have the opportunity to run for another year, because they are elected positions. You don't have to be on the council to support the council. So for example, I'm not on my child's SBDM council because legally I can't in my position as a central office employee. It's not for lack of wanting to. But one way that I am involved is I'm on several SBDM subcommittees. So I'm on a budget committee where we make recommendations to the council. I'm on a comprehensive school improvement planning committee. So that's a great way to really be involved in doing the work that ultimately becomes a recommendation to the SBDM council. And then remember, even if you're not interested in doing that, you can also get involved in your PTA in a variety of ways. So reaching out to them and letting them know that you're interested in assisting and supporting students at the school, absolutely a great idea. Which brings me to the next thing. If I'm not on the council, but I'm interested in knowing about like when the meetings occur or what the minutes look like, our councils, since they're a legal governing body, are required to be part of, are part of the Open Meetings, Open Records Act. And we make getting this information as easy as possible. So again, always, if you can't find things, contact me, I'll get them for you. However, we put everything on the website. So when you go to the SBDM website, you're going to see 2 major points of entry. One is council member resources, and the other is school community member resources. So if you drive through that, you're going to be able to see all of the meeting dates for every single school in Jefferson County for the entire school year, whether or not they're, and the location, so whether or not they're meeting in the library or whether or not they're meeting virtually. And so you can look at that and you can go and attend, either attend virtually if it's a virtual meeting or face-to-face if it is one of the face-to-face meetings. In that same location, though, you can also find the minutes and the agendas for every single school in Jefferson County. We only keep about 2 years up online, but I can provide more. We've got minutes and agendas and all the supporting documentation going back to 1992 in Jefferson County. So I can get you anything you need. So the best way to find this is just go online and search JCPS SBDM, and then that's going to pull that website right up.
Nice. Well, speaking of the website, I think I can attest to that. I've perused that area and it's very user-friendly.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And while I was there, I came across the Comprehensive School Improvement Plan. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that is?
Yes, so you called it the Comprehensive School Improvement Plan, which is the long name for it. But as many people are aware, in education we love our alphabet soup and our jargon. So sometimes you'll hear that called the CSIP, which is the Comprehensive School Improvement Plan, and other times you'll hear it called the SIP, or the School Improvement Plan. Those are all three things are one and the same: Comprehensive School Improvement Plan, the CSIP, and the SIP. So those are the documents that are created usually by subcommittees that are presented to the council that ultimately approves these documents. And they're our game plan. So when we get our test scores and we look at them, what do we need, where do we need to improve, and how can we funnel our resources into those areas for improvement? So that's what all it is. It's a planning document to make sure that our focus on student achievement is intentional and a good use of resources. Also, remember, that's a living document. It's not one of those documents that we created and we're stuck with it and that's it. It's a living document, and it's altered by the council usually on a monthly basis. It's reviewed.
Nice. So it sounds like the council has a pretty strong presence, right, with
Absolutely.
these types of policies and plans. So how does this council or the sub-council monitor implementations of CSIP?
So they'll do that in a variety of ways. One, like I said, it's a monthly standing agenda item that the council reviews the Comprehensive School Improvement Plan in some form or fashion. They don't review the entire document start to finish at every single meeting, but they do alter it and make changes based on what's best for our students and their student achievement. They'll also get guidance through the district. We have a wonderful office that provides assistance to our school councils and our principals in the development and implementation of the the CSIP. And then KDE also provides quite a bit of information. But beyond that, I think sometimes we forget about the resources that we have available within ourselves and within our councils. So for example, Ian, I meet with all of the brand new principals once they get the position, and it's just them and I, and we just talk about, I have some things that I go over, but then I talk about their concerns and what their needs are. And I met with one principal, and he said to me, Shawna, I'm comfortable with the content, but it's the Robert's Rules of Order that I'm not comfortable with. You know, the first motion, the second motion, we've all seen it with the Board of Education. It can be a little bit daunting. And so he said, would you come and just sit next to me during my first meeting and help me along and just make sure I do it correct? I said, absolutely, I'd be happy to. So in prepping him for the first meeting, I explained to him, a good principal sends out the information to be covered at the meeting in advance so that their council members hopefully will have time to review these documents, and that way you don't spend the whole meeting reading documents. You can think about the documents ahead of time and come with suggestions for improvement. Well, the meeting that he had, the major item was the review of the CSIP. And so he sent it out to all of his council members, and we met, and he started the meeting and he did Robert's Rules of Order impeccably. He did not meet me, but it was a great experience for me to see the importance of getting those documents out to everyone prior to the meeting. So when he got to the part about the CSIP, he said, all right, you've all had the opportunity to review it. Does anyone have any suggestions for improvement? Well, it was a large group. It was a council of 12, and there was a long pause. And the long pause was because this was something they had never done before. They had reviewed it where the principal had gone through it with them, but they had never gone through it and provided feedback in a very intentional way. It just was a different leadership style previously. No judgment there, just a different leadership style. And so all of a sudden, a dad piped up and said, I'm looking at our parent activities, and I've noticed that we put the same amount of money in our fall parent involvement activities as we do in our spring. However, I know personally, being a dad here for multiple years, that our fall activities are much more popular. And I'm wondering if we need to either pour more resources from the spring event into the fall event, or do a better job, a more intentional job of involving our families in the spring event. And that opened the floodgates. So after that, we had a teacher who was an ECE teacher who went through and was like, I've got some concerns because we have two ECE teachers supporting this one particular component. We only have one. So I wonder where that money's going. And he was like, I wonder where that money's going too. So they started very intentionally going through it. But what was happening is they were all looking through their lens of expertise. The ECE teacher, it was very obvious, she had searched ECE and she was providing input on her area of expertise. The father knew exactly, he was a local community member. He knew what would make the local community, either what was causing them to not participate in the spring, but participate in the fall. And their input really strengthened that school improvement plan, or the CSIP.
That's very interesting to see how much of a domino effect getting a piece of information out in advance, like what positive effect that would have on the council and ultimately the students and families that are involved. In keeping that same framework, are there any other checks and balances that ensure SBDM Council is making the best decisions possible for the students?
The school community is the biggest checks and balance, because if the council passes a policy that they do not like, they will hear about it. And there is, embedded in every single council meeting, is the opportunity for public comment. So if they pass a homework policy that is not what is best for students, then they'll certainly know about that quickly. So we make sure that when our councils are looking at reviewing policies, that they're doing them at the correct time. So for example, if you're going to review a homework policy, it's best to review that in the spring for implementation in the fall. I think it's the same thing with things like dress code policies. Let people have a time to plan. And if it's anything that you think could potentially be controversial, find out what your school community feels before you make the decision. And that can be done through surveys. A lot of our schools will survey their wider school community, including parents and teachers, to get their thoughts on whether or not the action is going to be supported or not. And including those subcommittees, and not just subcommittees of teachers, but subcommittees of classified staff members, school support staff members, community members. If the school has a magnet, including magnet members or people in the community who would ultimately support that magnet program. So those are certainly some ways that there's the checks and balance. But ultimately, there's also me. And I review everything. Every set of minutes, every agenda, anything that goes out to the media, the special called media notifications, which are ensuring that the school community knows when the council is meeting, if they're meeting outside of their regularly scheduled times. I take a look at those and make sure that everything is on there that's supposed to be on there, and there's nothing in there that maybe could send them down a long way. I also review all of our policies to make sure that they are legal and reasonable. But then our schools, through Dr. Marshall's office, the Department of Equity and Diversity and Poverty, we have a document called the REAP. It's the Racial Equity Analysis Protocol, and all of our councils use that document prior to making major decisions. So that includes major changes to the CSIP, major changes to budgeting, any changes to policy, and that is a way to tease out any potential inequities, because it's very possible that everyone is not at the table, but everyone has to deal with the consequences of the policies and council decisions, and we want to make sure that every kid is supported by council work.
Awesome. That's good to hear because we touched earlier on having different stakeholders and multiple lenses to look through. So I think that REAP tool is an awesome way to consistently have checks and balances.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to circle back on, you mentioned your large team of one earlier, your data collector. What sorts of information does the SBDM Council collect?
So information is collected usually always for a purpose. A council doesn't collect information just for fun. So they collect this information prior to making a decision. And this information can be collected in a variety of ways. So, for example, we talked about dress code. If there's potential change to the dress code, a lot of times the council will send out a survey to get the thoughts of the wider school community. And the electronic surveys have been so beneficial because not everyone has a computer at home, but so many people have smartphones or access to smartphones. And so they'll collect that information. They also use school accountability data. So they'll use things like their MAP scores, which is just basically a way of checking along the way throughout the year how close our kids are to where they need to be successful. Our ACT scores, our student attendance, even for our youngest learners, the school will use the Brigance. So for the kindergarten students to make sure where they are so that they know then where to support. So if you have kindergarten students coming in who are really, really struggling, maybe that's time for the SBDM Council to make the decision to funnel more resources into the kindergarten students. But really, it depends on the survey, or I'm sorry, on the decision. We do have district-wide resources. We have a comprehensive school survey that is sent out every year, and that survey is specific to each school as well as to the district. And the nice thing about survey is you can look at and ask questions like, do you feel safe going to and from school? That's something that I can use to make decisions as a council member, particularly thinking about that school councils have authority over the school or the emergency school plan and the emergency school policy. So information like that can be invaluable when making that decision. So they'll use a variety of resources and data collection when making decisions.
Right. Well, we've talked quite a bit about a variety of stakeholders, right? We've talked about parents and guardians and the community, but who are some of the other stakeholders of SBDM Council?
I would say everyone. Because you think about the success of our students and how well they are prepared to contribute to society when they graduate from high school. We want to make sure that they're ready. And our school community, or not just our school, but the city of Louisville wants to make sure that they're prepared, as well as the state of Kentucky and the entire country. So I would say that everyone is a stakeholder in the education of our students.
How do the policies and bylaws that are created by SBDM Council promote student achievement?
So the policies, as I discussed earlier, are the legal documents that the council adopts, and then those become implemented by the school staff, so usually by the administrative staff. So they contribute to student achievement in every single way. Every policy must contribute to student achievement. So you think about curriculum and instruction. If we must have a strong curriculum and strong instructional practices in order to assist students in being their best. We must, when we think about the assignment of student to classes and programs within the school, how do we group our kids? How do we decide which kid gets which teacher, which kid ends up in which program, in order to ensure that the child ends up being successful? So we want to make sure that they're with teachers that will ensure their success, that they're in programs that will ensure their success. And then then when we think about a lot of it too is the assignment of teachers to those students. So how do we know which grade or which department or which content area a teacher will teach in? That's all decided by the council as well, and that ultimately will impact student achievement. I think about the diversity and equity policies. Do we respect diversity and equity in our school? And what messages are we sending? I think about, too, school space. You wouldn't think that school space would be that big of a deal, but you send a message. If you put your ECE kids, your exceptional child education students, in a closet in the back of the school, and that's where they receive instruction, that's sending a message that they're not important. And so you want to make sure that you are using space in an appropriate and respectful way.
Interesting. Well, you sound like you are a very busy person. And I think for those who have a busy schedule, right, you have to find a nice work-life balance. How important is self-care to you, and what do you do to maintain it?
I think self-care is incredibly important to me and to everyone. If I leave everything at work and bring nothing home, then I'm not going to be balanced. And so I think it's important to do the best I can professionally, but also do the best I can as a wife and as a mother. And so I do work a lot of nights, and I do work a lot of weekends. But I pay attention to those around me. And when my son wants my attention, he gets it, and he gets it without a doubt. It's not that often, but when he wants to talk, I am there for him, and I drop everything. Same thing with my husband. We try to make sure that we are involved in activities. My son runs cross country, and is getting ready to start swimming. So a lot of that is spending time enjoying and celebrating celebrating my son.
Nice. That's a beautiful thing. So as we kind of come to a close here, I'd like to know about one teacher or educator who is part of the reason you're here and you're doing this work.
So I want to twist this, if you don't mind. There are so many teachers and so many educators who have had an impact on me, and for that I'm so incredibly grateful. But I think about perspective and the importance of understanding where everyone is coming from. And I think about a situation that occurred when my son was in third grade. So you get emails asking for volunteers as a parent. And so I got a PTA email saying, hey, would you volunteer for the holiday shop? You know, it's December and a lot of the schools do that. And I deleted it because I was busy and it was in the middle of the day, and then they got desperate. And so I was like, they only want, 20 minutes of your time, and I'll do it. And so I drove to my son's school and stood outside of his door waiting to go and have lunch with him and then volunteer at this holiday shop. And there's a lady standing out there with me, and she and I just kind of chatted. She was as nice as she could be. And then we went in, we had lunch with our kids, and then she and I both went and helped. We were the only volunteers at that time at the Santa shop, or the holiday shop. So it was a little crazy helping, the little bitties figure out how money works. And they're buying gifts for other people, not for themselves. That's another hard thing for kindergartners to understand. And so then we finished our time and we were leaving. And so as I'm leaving the parking lot, I'm driving, and it is an exceptionally cold December day. And I drove past the woman that I had met earlier in the day, and she was wearing just a jeans jacket, and she was walking. So in the school that he attended, it was not uncommon for families to send their kid, neighbors, if you will. And so a lot of them had very short drives or short walks. And so I was not surprised to see a parent walking. But I was surprised by, it was cold and she was not dressed warmly. And so I pulled up and I said, hey, do you want me to give you a ride home? I felt pretty comfortable. She's a nice lady. And she looked at me hesitantly and she said, no, but can you give me a ride to the bus stop? Now, this school was, I call it landlocked. It was not on a major bus thoroughfare. You had to walk about 1.5 miles to get to a TARC stop. And so I said, well, sure. Hop on in, thinking, gosh, that's 1.5 miles. That's in this cold. So we're driving, and I said to her, please, you know what, why don't I just give you a ride home? And she said, I live pretty far away. And I said, it's Louisville, I know it's really far away. And she said, and she finally agreed, hesitantly, and I drove her home. Her home was 30 minutes away on the opposite side of town. And in the conversation, this mama had taken 2 buses and walked 1.5 miles to come to her child's school to volunteer at this holiday shop, and then was going to walk 1.5 miles to a bus stop and take 2 different buses. And remember, if it took me 30 minutes to drive her, can you imagine? We've all been on TARC before. Yeah. It's not, it's a great resource, but
not a quick ride.
Not a quick ride, and when you've got transfers and it's cold out. And she worked for a nursing home. She'd taken the day off. So this mama took the day off. I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. Took the day off, took 2 buses, walked 1.5 miles in the freezing cold, and was prepared to do it all over again, to have lunch with her daughter and volunteer for 20 minutes. That taught me what parent involvement looks like. And that taught me about my privilege and how I need to be involved and help out as much as possible. So as much as so many teachers and administrators have taught me throughout my career, this woman, this mom, taught me more in just the 30 minutes in the car with her than anybody else did. And for that, I'm grateful. And for that perspective of parent involvement, I'm grateful.
Wow. Well, I'm so happy that you were that person to give that experience. Because if not, you wouldn't be here and we wouldn't have anyone else doing the work that you're doing besides you. So again, just want to say thank you for joining us today, and best of luck to you in the rest of the year.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful opportunity, Ian, and I really appreciate all that you do to help us and to help our students.
All right, thank you.